Hello, my name is Pete Tseronis, and I am honored to lead a discussion today with 4 thought leaders in the nation's critical infrastructure domain. Mr. Jeremy Gusteau, Senior Director for Product Marketing at Sequans Communications. Mr. JL Thoughts, the VP of Sales and Business Development at RAD. Mr. John Yaldwin, the Chief Technology Officer and founder of 4RF. And Mr. Chris Traybowl, Product Line Leader and General Manager for the GE Critical Infrastructure Communications Division. Great to see everybody.
Good morning.
All right. Well, listen, a little bit about me for the audience. I lead a company called Dots and Bridges. Connect dots, build bridges, create light bulbs. That's what we're going to do today. You're going to hear from these amazing individuals. We're going to reference topics related to the Anterix Active Ecosystem program. It's a collaboration nexus, I like to think of it as, where just so much wisdom is convened and folks discuss about the modernization and transformation of our critical sectors, most notably the power grid, and the technologies, the services, the innovation, the risks that we confront every day. One can watch the news and hear about bipartisan infrastructure law funding, Inflation Reduction Act spending. We hear about the CHIPS and Science Act. Folks, from grade school through my mother-in-law up in Pittsburgh, people are intrigued as to what is all this critical infrastructure resilience discussion, all the devices connected, how does it work? And I think a lot of today, our audience will hear about a term called LTE Cat-4 module. So geeks on the call and in this discussion, you'll love it, but we will use terms and we will explain, and we will also hope that you can walk away intrigued and interested in learning more. I like to say be educated, informed, and enlightened. So without further ado, that's a little bit about me and my passion, and I'm excited. Jeremy, why don't we talk a little bit more about you, your passion, and the company that you work for, and what makes it special, and we'll do that. We'll follow up with John, JL, and Chris.
So hi everyone. So I'm Jeremy, and I'm, as you said, Pete, leading the product marketing effort for Sequans. Sequans, we are designing chipsets and modules for cellular 4G and 5G connectivity, and we're really dedicated to the IoT market and focusing a lot on the utility segment. And I'm French, as you can tell. I'm based out of the US, as I said, West Coast. And yeah, I'm glad and honored to be here, part of this panel. And one of my hobby is about photography. I love taking pictures. And so, yeah, that's what I do when I'm not working.
I love it. Way to humanize yourself there, Jeremy. And folks, Sequans Communications is doing some fantastic work with our colleagues at Anterix, and this module we'll get into. I have to just put it out there because I thought it was cool, and being a Greek guy, it's I think referred to as Cassiopeia CA410. Is that correct, Jeremy? Okay.
That is correct.
Cassiopeia, for you Greek myth lovers, at least based on the books I read my kids, had the daughter Andromeda, who Perseus saved from the Kraken. If you watch Clash of the Titans, now you'll understand, but Cassiopeia was the mom. How that correlates, I love stories behind stories, but Jeremy, that's a very cool name of a module. John, how you doing? A little bit about you and your company, my friend.
Thank you very much, and bonjour, and good morning, everyone else. I'm very pleased to be able to be here. 4RF is very active in the utility space around the world, and we have particular focus on the United States. And the Anterix spectrum, we think, is a great opportunity for utilities. And we're very pleased that Sequans has been able to step up and offer alternatives to some of the major chip vendors that we feel have neglected the Anterix opportunity. So we're very grateful for Sequans, and it's the reason we're here today. I'm the CTO, and I also founded 4RF 25 years ago. And we've been always focused on critical infrastructure and public safety. So that's our focus. We don't do anything else. And I can say without fear of contradiction today that having the collaboration, working together to give us as OEMs the right kind of products that we need for our customers is very, very important, particularly with the various issues. You've mentioned threats, but there are also opportunities. We have the smart grid that's going to be something that will contribute greatly to carbon reduction, and I'm very pleased that we're able to bring products together to the market based on this sort of technology.
Wonderful, John. I appreciate the statement of what you only do, but critical infrastructure and public safety is pretty massive and impressive. There are 16 sectors that are deemed most critical in the United States, but I think it's pervasive: energy, transportation, the stuff we depend on every day, and whatever we can do to create a more reliable, resilient sector, in the case, you know, it be a new utility, is awesome. And by the way, I was the former CTO as well, so I love my fellow brethren, and I appreciate it. I used to call myself a connective tissue officer, other than being a geek once in a while. So it's good to see you again, John. JL Betts, welcome, and talk to us a little bit about your journey to date and your passion for this topic.
Absolutely, appreciate the opportunity. So I'm with RAD Inc., which is in the ecosystem of 10 RAD companies that make up about a $2 billion business unit or ecosystem of various wireless software and hardware products throughout many different markets. I focus on the critical infrastructure, as well as John and most everybody on here, but we also dip into the service provider side of business, and again, a lot of wireless to kind of overlay a lot of those applications. RAD's a 42-year-old company, going on 43 years. Again, I've been with them for coming up on 3 years, and the main thing that attracted me to this coming on board was the manufacturing side of it and innovation that RAD has always been on the forefront since inception. And I just felt it was an opportunity with the deep base and experience in the infrastructure utilities, electric utilities, oil and gas, and such like that. But also where they're going forward with the IoT. I spent the last 7 years concentrated on the IoT market. Very interesting. I mean, that's the next wave, part of one of the next waves. So joining with Anterix, it kind of adds to our solution portfolio, a lot of advantages, and working with colleagues. Everybody, you know, the other two panelists I'm very familiar with, worked with them, known for many years. So it's a small group, but very intelligent and fun group to be with. So I'm looking forward to this session.
Great, JL, I appreciate that. I love the shout out to the IoT world. I do a lot in that space, more so saying it's the cool part of the next generation internet, but it's also could be a scary part. There's an industrial Internet of Things, known as the IIoT for our audience. They're kind of the same, but they're not, and I think that's where this world of operational technology and information technology, a result of the world transforming and modernizing, is important. And just a quick shout out to the mention of the service providers, the community. JL and everyone knows that it takes OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, solution providers, application developers, moving the needle towards a more resilient, reliable, critical sector, whatever sector you choose. It takes that village to move that needle. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Mr. Chris Traybowl, a little bit about you and your company, my friend.
Sure. So Chris Traybowl, general manager of the GE's Critical Infrastructure Communications. So like John and JL, that's our focus, critical communications, primarily in the utility space, but other verticals as well, such as oil and gas, heavy industrials. But so we are the communications group inside of GE. That sits in GE's Energy Renewables division, which is going to be spun out to its separate company, for those that don't know, beginning of next year, called GE Vernova. And that's all about, Vernova is new, green, next generation grid technologies. So we're spending a lot of our time focusing on that, working with the broader GA on the grid of the future and the grid of the future applications. And like John said, we've seen for a long time the value of the Anterix spectrum and how it contributes to that ecosystem. But there's been a challenge historically with a number of modules that really support that. And really happy to see this collaboration, as well as Sequans, all coming together to develop a solution that will address a key part of this market.
That's wonderful, and I appreciate all of you kind of giving that background, and there's synergy across all, or there's a tapestry of wisdom, as I like to say, that we'll hit on. And we'll use the rest of our time today, the next 45 minutes or so, to kind of dive into some of the technical. But let's start with Jeremy. I mean, the partnership with Anterix and this module known as LTE Cat-4. You could explain it however you want, as if it was, please, my mother-in-law, who will watch this one day and say, "Oh, I know what that means." I understand it to be it's got promise for combining 900 megahertz and CBRS spectrum, so that a utility could have an option, from a flexibility standpoint. But in your own words, talk about it and its value proposition.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely correct. So what it does, it brings a flexible approach in terms of connectivity to the 4G networks, whether the public network, because it has capability to run on AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile network, as well as private network, namely, running on the Anterix spectrum, in the 900 megahertz, as well as the CBRS, which is, higher bandwidth, potentially higher capacity. So it gives this flexibility in terms of the connectivity that you can get, as well as some resilience, so that if one of the networks is not available for any reason, coverage, something, network dropping, at least you have some resiliency with other networks. So that's what it is. And then you were mentioning as well LTE category 4. So category 4 in LTE means like a data rate capability, and LTE category 4 is really up to 150 megabit in downlink and 50 megabit in uplink, which really, in terms of usage, you get a few megabit per second to a few tens of megabit per second for your application, which allows quite a wide range of applications to run on this type of capacity. And this can be good for grid management, distribution system, and I guess we can talk more about the applications. But for so that's really what it is dedicated to. And yeah, I think in a nutshell, that's what we can say now.
That's a great nutshell. And I think for the audience and even for me, and this is, again, I tend to riff off what I hear, in a world that's become so connected, and I'm coming to John here, smart, put in the word, grid, cars, the need to capture information, yes, in real time, ultimately to trust that it has integrity, but higher data rates, higher speeds, information. We expect our phones to serve up a web page or to turn off our generator when we're traveling in an instant. So I think I heard you say that, maybe the number means that it's getting much more efficient with information and data that can pass back and forth. Is that fair? That was back to Jeremy, yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I saw a nod. John, comments on the module and what you feel about some of its promise.
Okay, well, if I can summarize Jeremy's comments perhaps, and then just add a bit more color. Most of our customers choose to combine the Anterix Band 8 spectrum with other spectrum or public carrier, and that's the reason why there are multiple bands in this new offering from Sequans, which is a response to the collaborative effort here. The spectrum might be CBRS, it may be other spectrum, but the goal here is to have adequate spectrum to deliver on utility needs. And those needs might be stuff that's perhaps a little bit geeky, a little bit hidden behind the scenes, distribution automation, fault location, or it might be more of the high profile stuff that we associate with the smart grid, such as the ability to adequately provision for electric vehicle charging. There are a range of different applications that utilities need communications for. Now, the category 4 is kind of the middle of the range combination of modulation and capacity. There are higher capacity modulation techniques are available. There are lower capacity systems more commonly used in IoT. But Cat-4 I like to think of as being the sweet spot in this range of technical complexity in terms of delivering capacity within the constraints that utilities have to work with. So that's essentially a summary. The other point that Jeremy touched on, which is an important one, is building out of resilience. One of the reasons why utilities want to have a private LTE system is to provide essential ability to withstand things like cyclones, the adverse weather that we're seeing more routinely these days, and to provide that sort of resilience with a network that's totally under their control, a network where they can decide, for example, how long the power should last, where they can decide how strong the towers should be, where they can decide what the coverage should be of their network. But having said that, many of those utilities also rely on failover to public infrastructure. It makes sense that in a network that you have the option to use both your own resources, but should there be an outage for some reason within your own network, to be able to fail over to a public carrier such as AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, etc. So that capability of failover, that capability to exploit the Anterix spectrum, and that capability to exploit additional spectrum that may be available, such as CBRS, all part of the important ingredients for this chip, this module that we're talking about today, and from the products that will flow downstream from its availability.
John, I loved it. I wrote down a lot there. It's when I'm looking down at JL, again, feel free to get ready to riff off that in addition to, your perspective. But I heard a couple things. I mean, this idea of resilience and the words control, communications, coverage, capacity, no intention that I'm just mentioning C words. It all seems to blend towards, look, the grid is ancient. It fuels a lot of the other sectors, and we need to keep it up, and we have to respond when environmental impact happens. And I think, John, you really hit on the world's changing, distributed energy, more devices, they have to connect. But this module, Cassiopeia, as I may call it, is something that is allowing us to accelerate the advancement, and in many ways, once you build in and bake in all the security and the risk that can come with that, nothing's foolproof, but this is helping us get to that world where the word resilience now is complementing the word reliable. So thank you, John. That really rang true. JL, your thoughts on Cassiopeia?
Sure. Well, just to go off what John said, I think we all echo what John said about the advantages of it, but just kind of put it in my perspective, I kind of look at this as twofold. Number one being for us, having the capability of having one module with both, well, actually with private LTE, the Anterix, CBRS, and public carrier, kind of going off what John said, is ideal. And for us, it may be a little more, I hate to say selfish, but a little, for us, it actually fits into our product line really well. It allows us to free up another modem port. While more importantly to the ecosystem, it's fast failover time, right? So you fell on one, or one goes out, the other one comes on immediately. There's very little delay because you can't have delay in utility markets. But it opens up another modem for other things like LoRa, edge device connectivity, Wi-Fi, maybe other unlicensed or other radio modules that will help build and actually get to the actual edge, actually to the component, to the sensors, to the level sensors, and the motion and the vibration to help be predictive. And that's where kind of AI comes into play. So the thing about it is you don't have to go that route now. So for us, it frees up another port to allow us to do a lot more things down the line if the customer needs that. And secondly, for the ecosystem itself, having the capability of having a low latency, a multiple megabit, I think it's 150 down, 50 megabit up. It's a far cry different from traditional SCADA technology where you get anywhere from 9600 baud to a couple hundred kilobits. Now we're talking megabits that is ready and available. Very little or no infrastructure needs to be built out on a public carrier. And kind of put that in perspective to an example. I live in the state of California. And we are right now there are 79,000 EV charging stations right now, and 35,000 are public. Well, we have an initiative by our governor by 2030 to get to, they want to have 7.5 million vehicles on EV. Now, to accomplish that, you need about 1.2 million EV charging stations. And put that on an already, taxed system, just, there has to be a build out of higher, more reliable connectivity on the grid. So this type of initiative kind of looks, for the ecosystem, for the environment, right? To go to this cleaner burning, less fossil, more electric and solar applications. So, a lot of good things happening, a lot of work to do. I think if you do the math on just in California, they have to install to meet the initiative in 2030, I should say 2030. They have to install about 165,000 EV stations a year to meet that. So if you have an infrastructure, that's hard enough as it is. So building out a reliable infrastructure on top of that, it's quite a challenge. And you can echo that in every state. So it's going to be quite a ride, and I think we're all going to learn along the way as well. So.
Yeah. And before I head over to Chris, I love the reference to this. I think of things in threes. You hit private LTE, CBRS or other bands, but public carrier. If we're going to embrace this art of the possible and a resilient grid that's sustainable, flexible, what are the words? Secure. It goes on and on. We have to accept that we need more connectivity. We need secure connectivity, and we do ensure that there's integrity built into that so that we can make those decisions in milliseconds and not minutes. So, it's mitigate risk, but also embrace the art of the possible. And I appreciate that, JL, big time. Chris, comments on this and Cassiopeia, the module and its promise.
Yeah, no, and I think the JL and John did a very nice job summarizing. But I would echo everything they said. For us, it's the value of the part. It's a very cost-effective part first and foremost. We see, our customers same exact scenarios as what John described, right? So they've embraced LTE as a technology. The days of proprietary broadband solutions are pretty much behind us, and the ecosystem is definitely focused on LTE solutions moving forward. So this module definitely enables that. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned yet that we're seeing is it's helping with the inertia of some of our customers who know they want to move this way. They've made the decision, they see the value, but they're not sure exactly which way they want to go yet. So having that ability to be either a band 14 AT&T device, which is pseudo-private or entirely private on Anterix spectrum or CBRS spectrum, is getting some customers to move, knowing that they can buy a device soon that allow them to go multiple different ways, give them that resilience, give them that failover, and design some pretty interesting networks of how they want to handle that resiliency. And then lastly, I would say what JL said, for us, being such a nice sweet spot of the different band support, it frees up that extra communications spot where we can add an edge compute module or a proprietary license module and allow utilities to really create resilient networks, both that are broadband and offer some edge computing as well.
So Chris and team, we're going to come back to Jeremy. We're going to talk about the ecosystem and just the importance of collaboration and dialogue that matters. I will say, being a former data center guy, I grew up in one in the late 90s when IP telephony was really becoming a thing. And I remember the, voice, video, and data networks now could be on one and freed up ports to do other things, which if you haven't worked in one audience, go take a tour of a data center. Any free space can allow us to maximize and leverage the infrastructure that the wonderful companies out there make. So I love that point. That was a light bulb moment for me. So good stuff. Versatility, flexibility, resilience, reliability in that segment there. It sounds like Cassiopeia is a thing to be looking at if we want to create a grid of the future. Jeremy, the Anterix Active Ecosystem program, collaboration, conversations, bringing the right people together, having the dialogue where we can, as a community, talk but also have a dialogue that isn't, you know, talking past one another in violent or even non-violent agreement, disagreement. What's the experience been like for you? Obviously, the partnership with Anterix, but the ecosystem in general. And then I'd like everybody else to comment on the importance of that dialogue.
Yeah, no, it's been valuable. Like there's always a value in bringing an ecosystem together because, and notably when it comes to the utility space, the value chain can be quite complex between chipset vendor, connectivity provider, chipset, operator, module, the people building the hardware, the meter itself, the smart meter, what makes it smart, and the whole backhaul system is very complex. So animating such an ecosystem, such as what Anterix did, brings a value, and not only limited to the Anterix spectrum, but having a bigger vision than just monetizing on a spectrum which Anterix owns, helped bringing that many actors together, and for us, it helped us understanding the need, so that we could build hopefully a product that makes sense. We were looking into what the market had to offer for the need of private LTE for the utilities, and the solutions that we were seeing were potentially a bit over-dimensioned or overpriced. Some of them were capable of doing LTE category 16. So we are category 4, category 16 gets up to 1 gigabit per second in downlink, which is great, but maybe not applicable for the need of the utility. It's really what we believe is a bit over-dimensioned. Or they lacked the possibility to address the US bands, private and public, all the world worldwide. So they would be like the one that you have in your smartphone that can go to the US, Europe, Japan, Australia, which is really not what would be needed to address the domestic US ecosystem for the utilities. So we didn't see the right fit, and this is really what, talking to the various actors in the ecosystem helped us understanding that, and hopefully build the product which is needed for that, to serve that purpose. So definitely an ecosystem brings a lot of value because it gives you a wider vision and helps building products and solutions.
I love it. It's the peripheral perspective versus what a lot of organizations I've been a part of, they call them, silos or cylinders of excellence. What a great way to bring the people together and just have the perspective. I loved the comment, by the way, about while Cat 16 might be something we use one day, there's still that may be where the puck's going, and we can take advantage of that. And anybody who knows software development, software, or even Microsoft Word has capabilities you probably don't know exist and will never use, but they're there, and there will be a time and a place. But it sounds like the Cassiopeia module is right place, right time with what's going on in the world. So I appreciate that and the emphasis on collaboration and dialogue. John, your thoughts on the ecosystem?
Well, I think it's a little unusual to see competitors working together like this, but I think it's a natural response when you look at the utility situation. One of the themes that we haven't explored yet is supply chain diversity. 4RF likes to be very agile, and we like to have multiple vendors available for critical components that we need to deliver solutions to our customers. And in fact, our customers are very much the same. You'll find with utilities that they will often have multiple vendors supplying equipment so that they have diversity in their supply chain. And this issue of supply chain diversity, it's been a theme for a long time. As I said, at 4RF, we really like to emphasize our agility, but it took, I think, COVID to make real to all of us just what a threat pandemics and in future perhaps climate change will be to supply chains. And so having Sequans step up to the plate, as it were, to provide this module to collaboration of key utility vendors is, I think, perhaps a little unique now, but we may see more of this going forward. And hats off to Anterix for fostering the ecosystem concept where vendors, although they may compete with each other, very strongly in the marketplace are able to at least discuss some of the common issues that we have. Now, I made a comment in my introductory comments that there are a range of chip vendors that make these critical modules available to OEMs, and they range from the very large that supply chips that are familiar to us through our various smartphone devices, through to quite small companies that deliver specialist products that we also rely on in our equipment. But Sequans kind of sits in the middle there, and it's able to deliver the same sort of agility that 4RF favors, but also deliver some of the heavy-duty engineering that's required for the cellular baseband processor, which is the key part of the module that we're talking about today. So I think that we can all take a lesson from the experience of COVID. We can take a lesson from the experience of supply chain issues, and we can take a lesson from the value of collaboration through this particular example of how companies can work together to bring about the right sort of part for the right sort of time to deliver the right sort of products to our utility and other critical infrastructure customers.
John, I loved it. The words diversity, supply chain, environmental threats, stuff happens. Pandemic affected us all. What we're doing right now is an option if we can't all be in the same zip code or in the same location globally, and yet we're, in this case, 5 guys having a conversation, sharing thoughtful wisdom. I appreciated that. That was amazing. And you know, the agility of this module, recognizing there's a lot of options. It's really that mapping of, well, what do you need to do what? And at least in this case, it sounds like Cassiopeia is very well received in the utility market. And again, bringing those folks together to have the discussion, to dispel myth, to have a value proposition explained. Shout out to the ecosystem. JL, your thoughts on the ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. Again, once again, to springboard off of what John said, kind of mine was my presentation to my CEO and our technology group is that, you know, anytime as a manufacturer, you have the capability to be on the forefront of something unique, a technology such as the Sequans modem. I mean, it is very basic for us. The main part, as I said before, as part of my twofold advantages of doing this is having that CBRS with the private LTE of Anterix on one module actually opens up a lot more opportunities for the customers, right? It builds that ecosystem out. They can define, they can do what they want to do when they want to do it, as far as edge compute or whatever else that they need. But kind of stepping back, you know, thinking as a manufacturer, and I probably can speak for every manufacturer, not just the 3 that are here. This is actually a very unique situation for us because, you know, what we call NRE, non-reoccurring engineering funds. As a manufacturer, we're used to working with customers. They come up with a unique solution. Typically, you negotiate some non-recurring engineering monies for us to have the seed to develop a solution. So for a manufacturer, well, actually for Anterix to be so bold as to go out and negotiate with a company like Sequans to come up with a solution, but then come around and actually get 3 manufacturers that are here on, you know, on this podcast right now, it's very unique for a manufacturer to actually give NRE money actually to Anterix, who in turn has already made the negotiation with the modem manufacturer. So it's a very unique situation. I guess the nutshell of that is, and we probably all agree here, we see the advantage, we see the upside of this, you know, as we've all talked about, private LTE, CBRS, all that is great, but you know, for companies to jump on board like this, I think it's a good indication of just what a unique solution that we're going to have. And being able to be, again, to kind of close it out at the very beginning, being in the forefront of this, being one of the 3 manufacturers that will be offering this is unique. You know, I would rather, you know, start out of the gates with the 3 manufacturers on this call instead of 15 other ones as well. So the forward thinking that Anterix went out to get this, to team up with Sequans, and then come and get manufacturers to buy into this, it's a win-win for everyone.
JL, I really appreciated the customer perspective. Obviously, someone has to take a bold move or make a bold move, and Anterix pulling you all together, knowing it'll be tough conversations, but I've experienced that myself in government, right? The Department of X doesn't necessarily talk to the Department of Y. Heck, even the own Department of Energy, we had to knock on a lot of doors and say, hey, Office of Electricity, hey, Office of Fossil Energy, hey, Office of Energy Efficiency, billions of dollars in mission. Can we get in a room and talk about what's common? And in this case, we're talking basic communication, using spectrum to solve problems, whatever that problem is and how unique it is kind of two different discussions. And I appreciated you bringing that up, and you know, obviously the importance of ecosystem. I'm going to go to Chris here, but I want everybody, the next segment's going to be, we've talked a lot about the benefit of and why Cassiopeia and the module is something that utilities are excited about, and the ecosystem has helped trumpet that. But it's going to be the segment I call, like, you know, 2 to 3 to 4 years out, where the puck's going, because where it is now, it's meeting a need, and let's get that visionary thing going. So Chris, before you can come back around and have some time to think. The ecosystem, the collaboration, the value it's bringing to you personally in your company.
Yeah, so, you know, like John said, in terms of SKU management is one of the key things. You know, it is a very unique situation to have 3 competitors at individual opportunity levels take a step back and collaborate at this level, because we do see the value. And from our customers' perspective, you know, again, they don't want proprietary solutions. They want to know they're part of something that's supported by the industry and not just a solution by any one vendor. So clearly see the value there. On the supply chain side, you know, we had a lot of challenges during COVID with some discontinuity from some of our current suppliers. So having Sequans and another option that we think will do a much better job in terms of supply chain is going to be great. But also, we're seeing a lot more of our customers who want a little bit more of an in-depth look into our supply chain and which vendors are we using, and making sure we're using vendors that they don't deem have anywhere from security risks with the critical infrastructure bills being passed and up through Buy America initiatives. So it's very important to us to have very, very good technology partners, well vetted, that we can rely on. And then Anterix is bringing it together and having the vision to pull it together and approach us and allow us to cost share, as JL said, you know, provide, you know, it was an effective way for us to jump onto this initiative. And the benefit we get then is the first mover access that the 3 of us are going to have in terms of delivering this solution to our customers.
Wonderful. It's the second time we've heard this term, supply chain. And I think, again, anyone can hear it and understand we are a world that depends on parts and pieces manufactured here, there, and everywhere. And there's a reason the Chips and Science Act came out and said, look, you know, we have to look in our own country, in this case, in the United States, and start thinking how we can reinvent, work together, right? Not excluding, but also saying, hey, maybe we can put some brain power together and reinvent the way a chip looks and works and so forth. So I see that as something I heard from all 4 of you, is you put people in a room, maybe take the badge off for a minute, and good things usually result. So that's great, great stuff. Jeremy, let's come back to you. They call a phrase here, at least I love it, where the puck is and where it's going. And if you can have an eye on the next generation, but recognize once you're where you need to be, there's always something else that we can do to improve, whether it's the module itself or the market. Can you put on your vision hat and talk about what you see coming down the pike and how the ecosystem, obviously maybe some of the topics you're discussing, we have to be thinking about the future and constantly developing product.
Yeah, no, that is right. But even before talking about the future, what I would like to see us all as an ecosystem walking before we can run. And first is like this initial adoption of potentially that solution Cassiopeia, this CA410, just to see how this goes. And so now we can start engaging first customers to start building, to have them starting building products with our support, going all the way to certification and mass production, so that they can operate on the field. which I'm expecting will happen sometime in 2024, like, being real and deployed. And then what I would see moving forward, so once we use this kind of spectrum capability from Anterix and from the capacity to move back and forth between private and public networks, is to use the same spectrum flexibility for the endpoints, like the actual smart meter that could operate, and maybe not this time, maybe not in category 4, but on LTE-M, for example, which is technology which is being deployed, but using this spectrum flexibility to move between public networks and private networks to give more capability to the utilities. So this is what I would be seeing like right next in terms of serving endpoints with Anterix spectrum and this flexibility between private and public networks, as well as even an accelerator to this is what we start seeing in the market, in the IoT market today, is the integration of the SIM functionality. Instead of having one SIM or two SIM, this SIM that plastic SIM that we used to have in our smartphone, which is now embedded, so it's like soldered, so you don't need to put in a specific slot a plastic SIM, and now it's even becoming integrated. And together with the flexibility of having it integrated is a broader acceptance of the change of the profile, so that you can easily swap between operator profiles. Start with a public network operator like an AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and then have a fail-safe on Anterix spectrum, or the opposite, whichever way you want to look into it, or have the flexibility to have multi-profile, so that depending on the network conditions, the congestions, whether there's any specific issue on the network, you enable even further this flexibility by adding this kind of technology, such as integrated SIM and what we call remote SIM provisioning, which helps moving between connectivity solutions.
I love it, Jeremy. I integrated SIM functionality, whether it's kind of today or tomorrow. I loved it. That really spoke to me. And then you mentioned the capacity to move between spectrum bands is a wonderful today's generation opportunity, but we do have all those devices, right? And even if the secure comms is there for flexible, we need those devices to be able to take advantage of capability. So, well, that was great. That gives me something to want to research. So SIM functionality and integration and flexibility, good stuff. John.
The future continues to be incredibly hard to predict. And some of the points that we've made in the conversation this morning have very much been around challenges that have occurred that we perhaps didn't think about beforehand, such as COVID, climate change, these sorts of things. So the future is hard to predict, but there's some very clear trends that Jeremy have touched on. They perhaps net out to be a uptick in the adoption of private LTE in utilities. And we need to remember that this is still relatively new, that utilities have been long users of radio technology of all types, proprietary and standardized. And while LTE is incredibly common in the consumer marketplace, LTE technology for private networking in utilities is still relatively new. And there are a range of applications. Jeremy's mentioned smart meters, but we're seeing LTE being deployed in other areas such as distribution automation, which is part of making sure the way in which electricity is sent out to consumers and industries, the way in which that's managed, the way in which it's controlled. This is part of the distribution automation picture. And then the ability to locate faults, those sorts of things. These are all applications that are able to be delivered today with proprietary radio systems, but as we add more and more features and more technology to give us a better picture of our electric grid networks, we require more capacity. And this is where LTE is stepping in, and this is why utilities are looking at spectrum from Anterix, spectrum from CBRS, and other LTE solutions. Chris mentioned the band 14 AT&T, and indeed that's the sort of hybrid between, you know, a public network operator and a private network. So there's a wider range of choices. So, you know, in terms of future technology, let's not rule out just having a practical matter of choice in terms of technology. JL and Chris also touched briefly on alternative radio systems, and, you know, 4RF has been a leader in providing certain types of private radio technology for networks. And I think it's important not to think that LTE is going to be a kind of one size fits all. You know, not every problem can be solved with LTE. There are opportunities there for other technologies such as narrowband IoT, such as private radio systems, such as unlicensed products, LoRa, and other standards. So we need to be aware that, you know, one size does not fit all, that the utilities need to be able to select from a menu of solutions. And I think in the future, what we'll see is simply the additions to that menu. Coming down track will be 5G. Utilities are conservative generally, so I expect 5G adoption to still be a few years out. So there will be a raft of the things that we see in the consumer space, eSIMs, 5G, those sorts of things, being adopted in the utility space. So utilities aren't in a rush to embrace the future, and it's not that they're afraid of it, it's just that they want to see it proved out. But some of those technologies, certainly eSIMs, go a long way to making provisioning of networks important. And I'd just like to finish on this point that, you know, in the past, when rolling out radio systems, utilities have looked at the scale of hundreds to thousands of endpoints, and that kind of scale is relatively easy to manage. But with LTE, with the demands for EV charging, with many of the new features that are being deployed in the grid, we move from deployments of networks in units of thousands to units of tens and hundreds of thousands. And the ability to manage those larger networks, the ability to deploy them in the first place, starts to challenge our provisioning systems. So look to manufacturers for new provisioning technology, new provisioning facilities, and the ability to adopt things like eSIM to make that provisioning job easier.
John, eloquent as always. I will say that what stuck with me was a lot of that, of course, if not all, but also there is no one-stop shop. The bigger picture, there's more complexity, but you know, a picture could be worth 1,000 words. And if we have a better sense of that picture, then the application of existing tech and then future state, we speak a lot about the hygiene of the network. Up, down, those days are past. We want to know when things are about to go down as soon as we can to save lives. And I appreciated everything you said. Gave me a reason to talk about an upcoming workshop. So thank you. JL, your thoughts?
Sure. Well, let me kind of take a step back. Let's go back 10, 15 years ago. Let's go 10 years. You know, the idea of having a private infrastructure, whether it was a licensed or unlicensed, we call it spread spectrum, they were in their own little bubbles, you know, and they liked the control, and they liked, you know, they owned the system, their own people touched the system, no one else did, except maybe contractors. But other than throughput speed and some features, it's pretty much been, I hate to say stale, but pretty slow moving, especially in electric utilities over the last 20 plus years. And I reside on a technical advisory committee for an oil and gas trade show, and I do a vendor shootout, and I moderate it or co-moderate it over the last 10, 12 years. And you take it back as little as 8 years ago. Someone talked about cellular, you know, you had the T-Mobiles of Verizon and Verizon's and AT&T on there, and the idea was to get the vendors in the audience to talk about, hey, you know, what do you think about this? I mean, it was unanimously across the board. They are not going to put anything on a public network. You know, they want to own it all. They want their own bubble. And we just got done with the show a few weeks ago, and I would say probably 90% of the sessions we had, the talk, the displays, the conversations in the exhibit hall was all about not just cellular, private LTE, networks, but what are we thinking in the future? So the idea, I think we've seen a kind of a change very quickly from kind of status quo. We're going to keep building out our private infrastructure to now, not only we want something that's fast now, that's reliable and has features, but we want it, as John mentioned, 5G ready down the road. We want, and we don't know exactly what's ahead of us, but a solution like this gives us opportunity to bring the features and such as high flexibility, reliability, security, probably on the top of the list of everything. They have that capability of getting that now with this technology, and gives them the flexibility by going to private LTE, CBRS, or any other public carrier out there, and as a secondary source. But moving forward, where does it go? Specifically, like I could speak, of course, for RAD. We have products like Docker containers. We have you can run different applications on the device. Now, the customer may not need that now, but you'll have that flexibility and that capability if they ever choose to go there. But again, security, number one, the high reliability and the easeability of coming on these networks. But as John mentioned, not everybody's going to do this right away. I think we're going to see a big transition pushed by the ecosystem of again, going into the electric EV charging stations. I mean, as I mentioned earlier at the start of this session, I mean, imagine going, right now there's 35,000 units in California EV stations. In 7 years, you got to get to 1.2 million devices. You can't put that on a legacy SCADA system and expect it to work. So you have to look to alternative solutions, again, that are secure and reliable. So for us teaming up, we're already going that way with our product line, but teaming up with Anterix, using Sequans as the module, certainly gets us a boost into that forward-thinking technology and market that we're all looking to go to.
Yeah, I loved the old school thinking. There's a reason and a purpose for that's the technology at the state that it was, and control was the thing. With the cloud, the introduction of IoT and this ability to take advantage of flexibility and resiliency can bring, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. No, it's not. There's risk, but how do we mitigate the risk with the promise of tech? So I appreciated that. Hey, Chris, your thoughts on the future?
Yeah, like John said, it's a little hard to predict, but I think one thing is certain, that the proliferation of these private LTE networks is going to continue to accelerate over the near term. In order to do that, it's like some of the things that have been mentioned, eSIM, the ability to easily provision and network manage your system, have a good network management system is going to be key, because one of the trends we're also seeing in the industry is, these communication groups inside of utilities that used to manage these older legacy networks, 10, 12, 13 networks, condensing now onto 1 or 2 private LTE networks. That expertise is gone, right? So tools from the vendors to be able to help for deployment models, and expertise, because LTE at the end of the day is still a pretty complex system to develop, end to end. So tools and easy deployment models from the vendors, ability to offer services to the utilities to deploy these technologies, I think is going to continue the acceleration of the private LTE. And then longer term, the allure of 5G, the even higher speeds, lower latency, more applications that can then go onto the LTE, things that are in the millisecond, like falling conductor or digital transfer trip, things that are pretty esoteric that would never have been considered before on wireless. We're seeing more and more utilities start to engage us to say, to the art of the possible for some of those lower latency that only these 4G, 5G networks of the future will be able to support.
Chris, and for everybody, we're going to hit the parting shots here. It's 1:27. You get 45 seconds. What do you want to leave with the audience, and so forth? But Chris, I just got to say, major shout out to you for bringing up workforce development, the need to reskill, retain, and recruit, the insertion of so much technology and AI and analytics and so forth and data that's there. I'm not saying it in any way, shape, or form it's replacing the human brain, which is the most powerful computer on earth. But the fact of the matter is the workforce is also needing to change and adjust. And I used to say to my friends at Bell Atlantic when they supported our network before we went to IP telephony, look, you gotta learn about this new stuff. Your wisdom is worth its weight in gold, but if you turn a blind eye to it and think that it's PSTN or bust, you may be out of a job. And I think workforce development is what companies, and you emphasize it, are impressing upon its staff and others. So awesome stuff there. Thanks, fellas. Jeremy, parting shot. What do you want to leave with the audience? What'd you glean from today? And then we're going to hit John, JL, and Chris to close it out.
So first, Pete, thanks for moderating such a panel. That was, very motivating. Being with John, JL, and Chris today, this gets even me more excited to have Sequans being part of that ecosystem, not only to be able to promote like yet another chipset or product, but also to be able to bring a solution that brings the value, hopefully, to an ecosystem for resiliency, failover, security, sustainability at an affordable price. If anyone here would like to get more information about the product, you can reach out to us at sales@sequans.com for more information, or go and talk to your Anterix contact or any of the gentlemen here on the call, and we'll be happy to help and support.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeremy. John.
Okay, well, my parting comments really circle right back to the reason that we're here together, and that's the demand for spectrum is eternal. It's unquenchable. Spectrum is the lifeblood of modern networks, and utilities will not be able to deliver the smart grid initiatives that are so important, so critical to our future without the appropriate spectrum and the appropriate components and technology to take advantage of that spectrum. That's what we're about today. And it's impossible to understate the role that utilities will have in reducing the carbon emissions that we face right now, whether it's displacing fossil fuels in heating and transport, or to electrifying heavy industries like steel. It's literally about saving the world. And while that might sound like an overstatement for a group of vendors that want to sell products to utilities, we are in a bigger ecosystem than just the Anterix ecosystem. We're in an ecosystem of vendors, we're in an ecosystem of utilities, we're in an ecosystem of consumers, and ultimately we're in the ultimate ecosystem, which is the world.
Wonderfully stated. Well done, John. JL, parting shot.
Sure. Well, as usual, John had a good closing. I think we can just stop there and we'd all be happy. But to kind of in summarizing, I think that we're seeing a change. We all agree on that. I mentioned in the last statement that the days of yesterday are gone. Right? We have to move forward because of what's facing us in the future. So I have a saying, it might be a little corny, but I say to my kids, right, work smarter, not hard. Not that hard work's bad, but you have to be smart about it. And I think that's what we're doing here, right, is we're people are forward thinking, and we're trying to look beyond, and having having the Anterix platform with the Sequans modem certainly puts us in a better position, rolling into 5G. And, you've heard it from all of us. We have the capability and the flexibility of going to different, different types of LTE solutions, bands, and in private versus, the big carriers. But what we're offering and what the capability is, we're being able to offer a plethora of opportunities for these utilities that is much more secure, much more flexible, and just a better way to help them build in the future. So I will tell you, we all know there's a lot of vendors, that are in this market, but I look forward to having the year of the first year of exclusivity with these other two vendors. I think the three of us are all on the same page as manufacturers, and it's going to be good competition. I think what you're going to get at the end, the customer is going to get a better solution at a better price and better satisfaction. So
Thank you. Oh, no, all good. I wish we had more time. Chris, close us out.
Sure thing. So, we're really glad to be part of the ecosystem. I think everyone who heard here today, there's just a lot of commonality of how we see the market, how we see the trends, and where this is going. And where it's going is quite exciting, right? So the grid of the future, the carbon emissions, all the things that we're going to participate in with these unique, innovative solutions facilitated by the Alliance and the ecosystem. It's just an exciting place to be, and we're very happy to take part in it. So thanks for hosting today.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, you're amazing. I love the collective wisdom. My parting shot is thank you to Anterix for pulling this together. Please, this is a week of celebration with the Anterix Active Ecosystem. We've been hearing about just the wonderful dialogue that's happening and will continue to happen. Tomorrow, there will be another webcast. We hope you register for it and tune in because you'll have some more light bulb moments. I was educated, informed, and enlightened. Thanks again to all of you.
All right. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the opportunity.